I heard the crack before I felt it, a dry, sharp sound that echoed through our narrow living room. 1 second I was reaching for the door in my midnight blue recital dress. The next I was on the floor, my right knee screaming in pain. My father had kicked my legs out from under me casually, like knocking over a chair. "Now they match your life," he said, laughing from the couch. "Broken." My mother didn't flinch. She took a slow sip of coffee, eyes fixed on her phone. My audition for the full dance scholarship was in 2 hours. The routine I had rehearsed every night after my diner shift now hung by a thread. I pulled myself up, biting back the pain. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something inside me shifted. That kick wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. I limped out of the house without another word, holding the edge of the wall for support. My right knee throbbed with every step, each movement sending sharp signals of warning to my brain. But stopping was not an option. That recital was more than just a performance. It was my only shot at leaving that house, at escaping 2 people who saw me not as a daughter, but as something to belittle, mock, and discard whenever convenient. For the past year, I'd worked the night shift at the diner, collecting every spare dollar in a jar hidden beneath my mattress. While my classmates spent weekends partying or sleeping in, I cleaned grease traps, wiped counters, and came home reeking of fries and burnt coffee. And then I danced. I pushed aside the table in our living room every night, turned on the second-hand Bluetooth speaker I bought from a garage sale, and danced until my feet screamed. I trained not because someone told me I had potential, but because I had to believe I was more than what they saw. The audition was my only real chance at a future. The school offering the scholarship was 2 states away. Tuition, housing, training, it would all be covered if I earned that slot. The idea of leaving, of being surrounded by people who saw dance as art and not as a joke, was the single thing that kept me sane during the chaos at home. But now my leg was injured, and I knew from experience if I went to the emergency room, my father would say I fell. My mother would nod. No one would believe me. And worse, the injury would get documented. The school might think I was physically unreliable. They could revoke the audition. So I did the only thing I could. I kept going. Each step toward the community center felt like walking on glass. The sun was too bright, the air too still, and the sidewalk too long. But I focused on the beat of the music in my mind, the counts I had drilled into my bones. I couldn't afford to miss this. Not after everything. Inside the center, the receptionist took one look at my limp and asked if I needed to see a medic. I smiled, said I tripped, and filled out the paperwork with a shaky hand. The auditorium smelled like hairspray and ambition. Dancers stretched in every corner, limbs long and graceful, each one dressed like confidence itself. And then there was me, a diner waitress in a discounted recital dress trying to hold her composure on a leg that might give out any second. But none of them had what I had. They had support maybe, resources probably, but I had survival. And I wasn't going to let a broken house or a broken knee take that from me. My family didn't start out toxic, at least not in the obvious way. When I was a kid, there were flashes of normal birthday cakes from the store, old cartoons on weekend mornings, a trip to the lake every July. But those moments were more like accidental kindness than deliberate love. My father, James, had once been a contractor. He lost that job when I was 10, and something in him twisted inward. He drank more, slept less. The sharpness in his tone became violence in his hands. The worst part was how casual it all felt to him. He didn't explode. He delivered pain like it was routine, like flipping a light switch. My mother, Dina, was different. She never raised a hand. She didn't have to. She had her own brand of cruelty, calculated silence, cold dismissals cutting comments disguised as concern. She'd sigh when I walked into a room as if my very existence annoyed her. "Fix your face," she'd mutter when I wasn't even frowning. "Don't embarrass us in front of the neighbors." Over the years, I learned that nothing I did would ever be enough. I kept my grades high, straight A's. No praise. I skipped parties, came home early, never smoked, never drank. No thanks. I danced. I danced like my life depended on it because in many ways it did. But when I mentioned dance at home, my father would grunt, wasting time spinning in circles. My mother would echo, "Not everyone can afford to play pretend." Even when I won regional competitions brought home medals they never came to watch. The awards collected dust on a shelf in my room, never mentioned in conversation. When I told them about the scholarship audition, my father laughed. Scholarship. For shaking your ass on stage, I didn't answer. I knew better than to argue. My mother didn't even ask where the audition was. She just said, "Make sure you don't miss your shift this week. Rent's not paying itself." I was 18 and still handing over half my diner tips every Friday. When I asked why Kyle, my older brother, never paid, she shrugged. "He's going through things." Kyle was 23 and spent his days gaming in the basement. Somehow he was always going through something. But me, I had no room for emotion, no space for softness. The first time my father slapped me, I was 13. I had asked if I could audition for a local theater program. He didn't yell, just backhanded me so quickly I didn't see it coming. My lip bled onto the kitchen floor. My mother handed me a napkin and said, "Next time, don't talk back." I didn't report them. I didn't tell teachers. I knew how it went. No bruises, no proof. Even if I had them, I lived in a small town where everyone knew everyone. My dad fixed the roof of half the police department's houses. My mother organized PTA bake sales. Who would believe the quiet girl with the bun and the bruises no one saw? So I learned to disappear, to become useful and invisible. But Dance Dance was the one thing that made me visible to myself. And maybe that's why they hated it, because it gave me something they couldn't touch. Not until that morning. Not until the kick. That was their warning shot, their way of reminding me that they still controlled the ground I stood on. But in their attempt to break me, they gave me the clearest reason yet to get out. After the kick, something shifted permanently. Not just in my body, but in how I saw them. Before I tolerated. I endured. I kept my head down and did what I had to do. But now I started watching, calculating, measuring their behavior not with fear, but with strategy. I didn't limp for pity. I limped because I had to. But I started using that limp as a shield, an excuse to stay out of the house longer, to avoid dinners, to sneak moments of planning. My father thought the injury would humiliate me out of dancing. Instead, it clarified everything. At the community center that day, I saw parents with flowers, people taking pictures, girls hugging their moms after performances. I had never known what that felt like, and for the first time, I let myself admit that I had been raised inside a cage. A home that looked normal from the outside but thrived on keeping me small. I didn't confront them, not yet. That would come later. First, I observed. I saw how Dad's jokes about my limp turned crueler when his friends were around. I watched Mom pretend she didn't hear him, then call me dramatic when I flinched. "You're milking that knee thing, aren't you?" she said one night while scrolling her phone. I nodded. Let her believe that. The less they saw in me, the more invisible I became. And that gave me space. At school, I used every spare second to research. Scholarships, transfer deadlines, housing options, part-time job postings in cities I'd never been to. My locker became my second home. I stopped going straight home after shifts. I lingered at the bus stop pretending to wait for someone. I sat in the break room pretending to call a friend. In reality, I was mapping my way out piece by piece. Kyle noticed. One night, as I was icing my knee after work, he passed by my door and muttered, "Dad says you're acting weird," planning something I didn't answer. But I locked my door that night. Then came the turning point. A week after the audition, a letter arrived from the academy. I wasn't home when it came. My mother opened it. I walked into the kitchen to find her holding it like a piece of trash. "They want you to come in for a second audition," she said. "Private. Must be nice to get special treatment." My father raised an eyebrow. "So you limped good enough to get sympathy points, huh?" I didn't say anything. I took the letter and walked to my room, locked the door again. That night, I packed a small bag and hid it under my bed. My recital dress, some cash, my old phone, and the letter. I didn't know when I'd go, but I knew I would. They had stopped being my family long ago. Now they were just obstacles, and I was getting ready to move through them. The day of the private audition arrived quietly. I didn't announce it. I left before sunrise, the sky still dark, the house silent. My knee wasn't fully healed, but I had trained through worse. I'd taped it tight layered fabric under my tights and tucked my pain away like a secret. The studio was 2 towns over, just past the county line where nobody knew my name. No family, no history, no eyes waiting to catch me stumble. Just clean floors, mirrored walls, and the woman with silver hair who believed I was worth a second look. "Take your time," she said as I stood center. "This is your space today." I didn't need music to start. My body remembered everything. Every count, every stretch, every turn carved deep into muscle memory. I danced like the floor could catch fire beneath me, and I'd keep going anyway. When I landed the final pose, I stood there not breathing, waiting for her to speak. She didn't clap. She just nodded and said, "You're in." I waited for the rest term's deadlines cost, but she added full ride. Tuition room meals, all covered. I exhaled slowly, but not from relief. From the realization that now I had to tell them, or rather show them. I didn't want to leave in the middle of the night. That's what they expected. I wanted them to see me rise, feel what it meant to be left behind. So I went home and pretended nothing happened. I smiled when they mocked my limp. I nodded when Mom asked me to vacuum. I laughed politely at Dad's comments. "How's your little ballerina fantasy going?" he said one night. "Should I get you a tutu?" "Don't bother," I said. "I've got one already." They didn't suspect a thing. That's how little they really saw me. Then came the family dinner. Every few months, they'd invite their friends over, old coworkers of Dad's neighborhood couples Mom wanted to impress. It was a performance. Wine poured dishes, reheated, everyone dressed just enough to fake middle class. I dressed the way they liked, clean, neutral, presentable. Halfway through the meal, Dad looked at me and said, "So, have you quit the dancing yet? Or should we start looking at disability support?" The table laughed. Not full laughter, uneasy, testing the waters. I smiled, reached into my bag, and placed the envelope on the table. "Actually, I said I got in. Full scholarship. I leave next week." Silence. It spread like a stain. Forks paused midair. Mom blinked like she didn't understand English. Dad stared at the envelope. "You're what he said flat. You heard me." I slid the acceptance letter toward him, then the invitation to my first national showcase. "I'll be performing on stage next month. Front row tickets are limited, but I figured I'd offer them to you first." His jaw tightened. "So you think you're better than us now?" "No," I said calmly. "I know I am." That was the moment the illusion broke. Whatever power they thought they had, whatever control they held, through insults, threats, silence, it cracked. Because I didn't flinch, and I didn't need them to believe me. I only needed them to see me walking away. After that dinner, everything changed. Not on the surface, they acted like nothing had happened. But I saw the way my father watched me now, slower, quieter. I saw the hesitation in my mother's voice, the way she stopped mid-sentence when she spoke about my future. Their control had slipped, and they knew it. But it wasn't just about them anymore. Something had shifted inside me, too. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for permission. I wasn't looking for approval. I had built something that existed entirely outside their reach. And that changed everything. The studio gave me a mentor, a woman named Kaylee, who had danced professionally in Europe before returning to teach. She saw something in me, something beyond technique. "You dance like you've lived through something," she said after my third class. "Keep doing that. Don't clean it up." She wasn't soft. She pushed me, corrected everything, but never once did she belittle me. And that felt revolutionary. Olivia, a girl from my old diner shift, started texting me again. We hadn't spoken much in months, not since I stopped confiding in people. But she had heard about the scholarship and messaged me, "I'm proud of you. I always knew you'd get out." She offered me her guest room if I needed a place before moving into campus. I accepted. Quietly, I moved out piece by piece. A bag here, a folder there. My recital dress, my savings, my paperwork, my journals. I even took the small ceramic ballerina from my nightstand. The one I'd glued back together 3 times after Kyle knocked it over during one of his tantrums. When I finally left, I didn't announce it. I just didn't come home. I stayed at Olivia's. Her mom made pancakes the next morning. No interrogation, no tension, no silence, filled with judgment. Just syrup and coffee and a kitchen that smelled like calm. I almost cried at the normalcy, at the peace. Kaylee helped me prepare for the national showcase. We trained for hours, not just the routine, but stamina breath control expression. She told me they'll watch your feet, but they'll remember your face. Make it unforgettable. Meanwhile, word started spreading. The Academy released the list of incoming scholars. My name was on it. People from school I barely spoke to messaged congratulations. Some asked how I did it. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to be anyone's inspiration yet, but I did send the performance invite to my old address. No message, just the envelope. Let them decide if they wanted to come. I didn't need them there, but I wanted them to know I had never needed them at all. The day of the national showcase arrived with a cold morning sun and air so sharp it felt like the world was daring me to flinch. I didn't. I had been up since 5 a.m., stretching, reviewing choreography, grounding myself. Not in fear, in purpose. The venue was bigger than anything I'd ever danced in. The stage was wide, the audience deeper than I could see from the wings. But I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I'd spent my entire life dancing in the shadows of people who tried to silence me. This time, I would let them hear everything I never said with movement. Backstage, Kaylee gave me a nod. No big speech, just trust. Olivia sat in the front row, her mom beside her. They had flowers. Real ones. No one had ever brought me flowers for dancing before. My name was called. I walked out into the spotlight. I couldn't see the crowd not clearly, but in the distance in the shadows I thought I saw them, my parents. Standing, not seated. Not close, but present. I didn't let it shake me. I let it focus me. The music began, and I moved. I danced every word I had been forbidden to speak. Every bruise disguised with a sweater. Every time I'd been told to shut up. Every moment I'd trained in silence while insults rang from the next room. I turned it all into movement, and the room disappeared. It was just me and the floor. When the final note hit, I froze in the last position. Legs firm, chest lifted, arms wide. Open. Not hiding, not small. And then came the sound. Applause. Real. Loud. Long. People stood. I bowed. And I held that bow for a second longer than necessary. Not for the crowd, but for the past. When I rose, I allowed myself one glance. Toward the back. Toward them. My father expression unreadable. My mother arms folded tight. No smiles, no tears. Just stillness. And that was enough. I turned my back on them. Not in anger. In release. They were not part of this. They never had been. And now they never would be. After the performance, I didn't wait to see if they tried to speak to me. I slipped backstage, changed out of my costume, and walked out the rear exit into the cold night. Olivia met me there with her mom's car already running. We didn't talk. She handed me a bottle of water and we drove in silence. It was the kind of silence I'd never known growing up, the peaceful kind. The next morning, the Academy sent out a press release. My name was included again, now listed among the top performers of the national showcase. Photos from the event began circulating. One captured the exact moment I landed my final pose. Eyes forward, arms strong. I looked unbreakable. It spread quickly online, even among locals. I wasn't tagged directly, but I saw the messages. Is this the girl from our town? Didn't she work at the diner? She was always so quiet. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Word eventually reached them too. That week, my father came by Olivia's house. He didn't knock. Just waited outside until her mother told him to leave. He called once, left a voicemail. You made your point. I deleted it. My mother sent a message through Kyle. She's not eating. You should call her. I didn't. They had created a world where I had to disappear to survive. Now they had to live in that absence. That was their consequence, not courtrooms or handcuffs, but irrelevance. Being cut off from the one thing they never believed I'd become free. They stopped trying after that. No more messages. No more unexpected visits. Just silence, the same kind they'd used to control me, now turned against them. I finished my first semester at the academy with top marks. Kaylee nominated me for an international summer program. I was accepted. I traveled alone for the first time, performed in cities I'd only ever seen on postcards, and at each stop I carried with me the memory of where I'd started not as shame, but as fire. Meanwhile, back home, my father's drinking got worse. He lost his last part-time job. The neighbors began whispering. The image of strength he had spent years crafting cracked. My mother stopped attending the church group she once led. Word was she couldn't answer questions about me without breaking down. But I didn't return. Not for holidays, not for birthdays, not even when Kyle messaged that Dad had been hospitalized. I had mourned the parents I wished for long ago. I didn't owe ghosts my presence. Rebuilding didn't happen all at once. Freedom wasn't a switch I flipped. It was a process slow and uneven, filled with small victories and quiet breakdowns. At first, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to say I didn't belong here, that my acceptance was a mistake. But that voice, I realized, wasn't from the world outside. It was an echo of my parents. Their criticisms had become part of my internal script running on loop. So I began the work of rewriting it. My therapist at the academy, Dr. Arlen, helped. She never pressured me to talk, just sat patiently until I did. "You learned to survive in a war zone," she said once. "Now it's time to learn how to live." I joined a support group for students who came from abusive or neglectful homes. We met every other week, sitting in a circle of folding chairs, telling stories that no longer had the power to define us. I spoke last the first night. But when I did, I said everything. The kicks, the insults, the silence, the meals eaten in fear, the night I danced on a broken knee. When I finished, no one pitied me. They nodded. They understood. And in that room, I began to feel less alone. I started teaching beginner classes at the studio to pay it forward. Girls as young as 7 boys who hid in the back at first. I saw myself in them, not in their home lives, which I didn't ask about, but in their hunger to express something they couldn't name. I told them technique matters, but truth matters more. One day after class, a little girl handed me a drawing. It was a stick figure on a stage with giant arms reaching into the sky. "That's you," she said. "You fly when you dance." I kept that drawing in my journal, proof that I had become something different, something visible. Not everyone gets a second life. I had to build mine piece by piece. With every performance, every lesson, every boundary I enforced, I reclaimed space that had once been taken from me. The fear wasn't gone, but it no longer ran the show. I did. Years later, I stood backstage at a benefit performance supporting survivors of domestic violence. The event was held in a sold-out city theater attended by artists, advocates, and families, some still healing, some already free. I wasn't just performing. I had choreographed the final piece. It told the story of a girl who learns to speak through movement after being silenced for years. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't clean. It was raw, deliberate, honest. And it ended with her standing center stage alone, unafraid. Before stepping into the light, I looked down at my right knee, the same one he had kicked. I wore no brace, no bandage, only a thin scar still faint beneath the tights. A reminder, but not a limitation. I danced that night not to prove anything, but to give others a glimpse of what healing could look like. When the curtain fell, the applause was thunderous. But it wasn't the sound that moved me, it was the stillness after. The kind that holds weight. The kind that means something stayed behind. After the show, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been older than 19. Her eyes were red, her voice trembling. "How did you escape?" she asked. I didn't flinch. "I stopped asking them to let me go," I said. "And I started preparing to leave whether they wanted me to or not." She nodded slowly, clutching a small notebook to her chest. "I want to get out too." I touched her shoulder gently. "You can, but you have to believe your story doesn't end in that house." That was what I wished someone had told me years ago. That family isn't defined by blood. That survival isn't enough. We deserve more than just breathing through the pain. We deserve freedom, voice choice, joy. I haven't spoken to my parents since the day they watched me dance from the back of that auditorium. Not out of hate, but clarity. Some people choose their silence. I chose my sound, and in doing so, I broke the cycle. Not just for myself, but for every girl who thinks pain is normal. Every boy told to toughen up, every child who learns to hide before they learn to speak. The cycle ends when someone chooses differently. That someone was me. And maybe one day it will be her too.